think that what's been missing recently from your movie catalog is a whodunit, aka murder mystery, in the fashion of Agatha Christie and her protagonist Hercule Poirot. I hope that's how it's said. Then your wait has come to an end as Natives Filmworks brings you Katangari Goes to Town. It's been at least a year and a half since Weekend Getaway, which we reviewed here, several years since the CEO, and even more years since October 1, all of whom worked so that Katangari Goes to Town can crawl. Okay, just kidding. Or am I? Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Pearl and I review African cinema. Today we're reviewing Katangari Goes to Town, a comedy drama, or so they say, showing on Prime. I say it's a murder mystery or whodunit, okay? This movie, Katangari Goes to Town, is written by Emil Garuba. Hi, Emil. And is directed by Reuben Reng. For its synopsis, it says, quirky Katangari, a retired police inspector and legendary sleuth, is called to Abuja to investigate the murder of his international businessman cousin, Chief Bello Gang. Suspects include Bello's family, friends, and associates, all confined in this beautiful mansion until the culprit can be identified. Now, guys, this is a whodunit, so please go watch this movie. I don't want to be too guarded about, I'm not going to just all out say who the culprit is, but why don't you just go watch the movie before you come back, and so we can really enjoy this review. I'm going to give you a brief summary, so let's do a little walkthrough. Well, not quite a walkthrough, just a brief summary. Katangari, as we've been told, is a retired investigative police officer, and his key defining characteristic is his eccentricity. He shuns society.
I hate intruders.
Lives in near seclusion, tends his goats, and cradles his guns, which he fondly names Ratatok and Django. That's until his pace is abruptly disrupted or rudely disrupted when news of his cousin's death is thrust on him, and he's forced to journey into the big city of Abuja, whereupon he's conscripted into solving the murder of his cousin. Let's get straight into cast and performances. Segun Arinze playing the role of Katangari. He is a seasoned actor. We know what to expect from Segun Arinze, and especially in a role like this. I really enjoyed his depiction of this cantankerous recluse. You know, I really like this actor and he does really good in this role. I would just say that for the most part, he's really believable. However, some of his lines do fall flat, especially the ones that are intended as maybe comedy or witty repartees.
I'm in my academy.
Of course you are. Why will you claim to be otherwise?
You know, but he does deliver for the most part. All in all, it's great. It's a great and convincing performance. I could have done without that big head of white hair and the beard, a little distracting, but this was a good character. Let's leave that there and we'll come back to him in detail. But for now, let's move on to the next person on my list, who's Ireti Doyle. She's the ex-wife and mother of his cousin's two children. Munachi Abbi plays the second wife of his cousin. Next is Bethel Njoku, who plays Pastor Dominion. This is a really believable performance of an unscrupulous, grifting man of God with a sex addiction, although that part was in exposition. We didn't actually see that in play. He's also the purveyor of most of the humor in this film. I think he does a really bang up job. We have Patience Ujah, who plays the role of Mima. She's Bello's personal assistant, whom Katangari almost immediately deputizes and folds into his investigation. She's all right. And although her performance is kind of hard to track, it becomes obvious as we journey into the movie and, you know, down the line. There are other players, Bubemi Ejeye, Victor Panwa, who play the two Bello children, and, you know, just a host of others. But the main people that we need to focus on are the ones that I actually have described their characters. Guys, have you subscribed to this channel? Please do. Thank you. And don't forget to like this video. With all of that said, welcome to this review, the good, the bad, and the in-between. I love a murder mystery, guys. Difficult as they are to pull off, they're very satisfying when done right. Okay, so points for genre. Again, it's a murder mystery, not comedy drama. Now, this design or concept of a reluctant detective who's forced into, solving a case is a tried and tested concept. And it works really well in this movie with the characterization of this particular protagonist who is eccentric, he's irreverent, he's a rule breaker, he paints outside the lines, he's shocking, and then sometimes he's humorous. So it works. The world of this story is simple. First, we have a small community in or around Jos, and then the rest of it plays out pretty much in this well-contained space, which is the mansion. So art direction is really well executed here. There are a few fumbles, which I'm going to refrain from putting a spotlight on. Okay, that is in the toilet. Moving on. The technical elements work for the most part. The coloring, those greens were so verdant. And speaking of greens, oh God, you guys know how much I like sweeping vistas and just huge, beautiful landscapes. This movie films Nigeria in the way that I always want to see Nigeria on our screens. And they're just really great shots of, they're really, really, some really great exterior shots in this movie. The cinematography too is good. I think I've already mentioned the art direction. I enjoyed also the music, the soundtrack, the score, just all of it. All in all, I think I can confidently say that this is a beautiful movie. I can say that, okay? Let's get into story, beginning with the characters, which is very critical to a whodunit, right? So let's start with Katangari. Now, let's not be tempted with this character to conflate the depth of the characterization of this character, or, his many quirks. A lot is put into creating this character. Let's not conflate all of that with character development. So now, beyond him being a retired recluse, right? How do you say that word? Recluse? I honestly just realized I don't know how to say that word. There's not enough known about him to be invested in whether or not he solves this crime. So already we have a protagonist who has no actual stakes in what is going to be this character's journey in the movie.
Interesting.
As he would say. He himself, is not invested, like I've already said. Actually, none of the participants is invested in solving this crime, for that matter, assuming they even believe that there was a murder in the first place.
Interesting.
He's won many awards, that Katangari now, but he does a really terrible job of investigating this crime. And so that puts what is supposed to be sort of like his backstory into question for me if I'm judging him based on how he conducts this investigation. There are no stakes for him here. I've already said that. And so unsurprisingly, he remains unchanged at the end of this journey because, again, he was always going to be unaffected by the outcome of this investigation, unless, of course, there was a surprise twist, which there wasn't really. And no, his cousin leaving him money is not a twist. I do, however, like the contradictions of this character. For instance, his avoidance of people, but apparent fondness for his niece and nephew, his pragmatic approach to life, but versus his obvious vanity when, you can tell that he really loves that he has all those awards and plaques and everything. Still, the character development, as far as how it connects this character to the plot, it leaves a lot to be desired. And it's the same for the other characters, right? There's not much, there's almost no character development for any of the others. And so if we don't know these people at all, it doesn't surprise me then that none of them really holds up as a convincing suspect throughout. No convincing motive or even opportunity. Suspicion never really rests long enough on any one person for us to, because how a murder mystery works is that for some time you feel certain that this has to be the person, is this person, and then you get more clues, more evidence that makes you jump like, no, I think this person is going to make it better, and so on, but good luck with that here. And so in this way, I would say that the plot is a bit light. And that's perhaps why from the very beginning, I knew who the murderer was. Maybe that's a me thing, but you tell me in the comments if almost immediately you figured out who the murderer was. And that's kind of like the number one rule of a murder mystery, which is that every suspect has to be a legitimate suspect. But when you almost eliminate all the suspects just by virtue of them not really standing up to being legitimate suspects, you kind of make the culprit known by default, so to speak. Also, these characters are not very relatable. There's no one, that is even really grieving for one thing. Okay, he's been dead for like a month, but even then, there's a complete just lack of emotional cohesiveness in the story in general, and even in this story world, although a little of it is forced at the very tail end. Even the fighting between the wives, the ex-wife and the last wife, who was the current wife, it seems a bit just cliche, like something that needs to happen to Nigerianize this, because what is a death and a will reading in a Nigerian family if wives are not fighting? One of the conventions also of a murder mystery is that the audience needs to keep pace with the protagonist. I do believe if, like me, you figured out who the suspect or the culprit was, then it means we were ahead of our investigator, of our protagonist, and that's like the number 2 rule. We should be in lockstep with the investigator. And so while there were some somewhat believable clues, like the culprit evading sort of direct answers, their overzealousness, and stuff like that, it's not nearly enough. There are not enough red herrings also, or, even clues for us to follow. I don't know if you felt like you were solving this case alongside the investigators. I just felt like I'm just watching stuff unfolding on screen. I didn't feel like I was brought into it. And if there's any genre that courts the involvement of the audience, I would say is the murder mystery genre. It's like a co-op video game and you're playing together. We have a contract with the investigator to solve this crime. But in this case, he's just doing whatever her brain thing he's doing and just telling us via telling his deputy. Also, because no one really cares about this murder being solved, there are no stakes, right? So guys, a whodunit with no stakes, and no, the will reading is not stakes. That will would have been read eventually one way or another, whether that murder was solved or not. And so there's no stakes, no tension, no suspense. The plot is sluggish, again, as far as it being a murder mystery, and I will qualify that later. But for now, we're still treating this movie as a murder mystery. And for that genre, this plot is just kind of sluggish. The mechanism also with which this crime is solved is not believable, is not convincing. A button at the pool, and this is where she was just sleeping in a chair by that pool, so anybody's button can fall off. If you were ever somewhere, which is why, for instance, when investigators are collecting DNA, it's tricky if somebody who lives there or visits that place or whatever is the culprit, because there's a legitimate reason for their DNA to be on the crime scene. So that's a problem here. It was really a lazy approach to solving this crime. And then, of course, there are other questions that come up, like we have a big splash into the pool at midnight and no one heard. And then wasn't she wet after that struggle? When she comes back in, because it was quite a struggle, and this is somebody fighting for their life. You're saying there was no splash and all of that. And then the one that bugged me the most is, why wasn't Katangari arrested? I thought they were going to keep a hush-hush that he drugged the guy, right? Is this Sule? That's his name? Whatever. I thought they were going to keep a hush-hush. I even thought that, actually, do you know what? That is, I'm literally just realizing this in this moment, that was actually an opportunity to have some kind of moral conflict for our protagonist, where it'll be the question of, should he disclose that he had something to do with this man's death, or should he pretend and then he'll call his character into question, and it'll make our protagonist far more interesting, because now he's got a moral dilemma to solve as well as this crime. Instead, it looks like everyone is made aware that he was somehow implicated in this death. I mean, you tell me that you drugged someone and then the person drowns in the pool. That's manslaughter, right? So I don't know how he wasn't arrested. And then our culprit, you go to so much trouble, to have this kind of decade-long plan, or however long, it took her to execute this plan. And yet she couldn't do the small work of changing her name. And no, Jemima, or whatever her name was, becoming Mema. is lazy. She didn't change her surname. It was so easy to just make the connection. There's no work to be done here, okay? So that said, and in conclusion, this is a fun movie. It shock you, Abbi? It shock you? It shock you? This is a fun movie. I enjoyed this movie. What do I mean by enjoyed this movie? I enjoyed this movie once I disposed of the idea that this was a murder mystery. Once I took it for what it was and actually took them for what they said it was, which was a comedy drama. Not much comedy, but drama. It was a movie that I really could just relax and enjoy as long as I wasn't thinking this is a murder mystery or whatever. And also, there are small moments of levity here and there. And then there's that peacock, which I thought was a really nice touch. I did feel his frustration, so that was also a good use of the environment in storytelling. But if beyond that there was any kind of like symbolism to that peacock and his disturbance of him, it went right over my head. Tell me if you read more into it than the movie tells us. And so when I say don't come to this for a murder mystery, abandon hope all ye who enter, for this is indeed a comedy drama. But if you're looking for a good way to pass time, this is an enjoyable enough watch. And like I already said, this is a truly beautiful movie. I just love how, especially the exterior shots were filmed. There were too few of them though. I do really also love like the investment into that character and the quirks and all of that. So let me end by saying that my biggest feeling at the end of this movie is anger. Okay, Pearl, what are you angry at? My biggest feeling at the end of this movie is anger at how that man left his wife with nothing. I mean, he gave everybody something. Even Pastor Dominion got money. Even the cousin that does not like him, they don't like it. I mean, maybe he likes him, but this Katangari did not like his cousin. Listen.
All lies. That man never ever told any truth in his life. God rest his soul.
He said it, not me. So even he got money. Even the wife in the house who, let's be real, they don't have any children together. But he left everyone, but then he turns the mother of his children into a charity case. So that is what I left the movie having the biggest feeling about. Nothing to do with solving the crime. And I have the feeling that that was not the intention of the filmmaker for that to be my preoccupation at the end of this movie. Do I recommend this movie? Again, it shock you? I do. Because again, taken at face value, comedy drama, this is a good, fun, enjoyable movie. Have you liked this video? Have I convinced you to subscribe? Will you share? Do all the things, guys. I appreciate you guys. Thank you. That's it for Katangari Goes to Town. I'll see you when I see you. And as I say to you, you have the right to an incredible viewing experience. So never settle. Thank you.